Her family didn't ask why she left the fire department. They didn't know about the burns, the rehab, and the life she saved. And at a dinner party, the man she pulled out of the fire told the truth. What happened afterward shattered the illusion of kinship. Subscribe if you care, and post in the comments where you're watching from. They never asked about the burns, not once. Not when I showed up at my mother's house 3 months after the fire, with my left wrist wrapped in sterile gauze. Not when I switched to using my non-dominant hand for everything from carrying groceries to pouring tea. Not even when I stopped laughing. They looked at me like I'd abandoned something sacred, like I'd stepped away from a calling that made them proud. But they didn't ask, not once, not even Malik. In my family, silence was the language of judgment. The quieter you were about your struggle, the more tolerable you became. Emotions were too messy, too loud, too undignified for the Murs. My mother perfected this. She could sip her chamomile tea and slice someone's dignity apart with a single upward glance. My father followed quietly in her shadow, always in control, always measured. And then there was Malik, the golden boy, the headline grabber, the entrepreneur who turned student loan debt into a multi-million-dollar consulting firm by the time he was 30. Malik, who could charm reporters with ease, who donated to causes that earned him awards, who had every corner of the family living room framed in pictures of his achievements, the man who wore success like it was tailored just for him. And then there was me. I was the firefighter, the daughter who wrestled smoke and flame, the one who didn't go to business school, who didn't network at galas or invest in startups. I was the one who taught teens how to build shelters in the woods, how to stitch wounds in emergencies, how to find potable water when none existed. I'd worked 17 years in a job most people couldn't survive for 5. I'd held dying hands, carried broken bodies, screamed into radios that wouldn't respond. I'd bled, burned, and healed in silence. But they never knew why I left. They didn't know about the call that came in just after midnight. The dispatcher's voice flat, almost bored, when she said, "Abandoned cabin, no signs of life." They didn't know it was our 3rd fire that week, that my body was already operating on fumes, that my hands shook when I held my helmet. They didn't know I could feel the forest itself groaning under the weight of flame, or that I almost didn't go in. Protocol said check. My gut said don't. But I went. The smoke inside that cabin wasn't just thick. It was alive. It clawed at my lungs, crawled under my gear, whispered lies about what was and wasn't there. The wooden beams above me creaked and popped, warning me with every step. My flashlight cut ribbons into the dark, mostly useless, but I pressed forward because that's what you do when you're trained to put others before yourself. Then I heard it. A cough, faint, impossible. He was slumped against the back wall. Suit jacket scorched, skin ghost gray with soot, eyes blinking open in confusion. He tried to speak, but only air came out. I didn't know who he was. I didn't care. He was alive, and that made him mine. I grabbed the collar of his jacket, dug my boots into the warped floor, and pulled. A beam collapsed just behind us, splitting the ceiling and sending down a storm of sparks. One caught my left arm. Just a second of exposure, but it was enough. The pain came sharp and deep, slicing through my gear like butter, sizzling against my skin. I didn't stop. I couldn't. We hit the threshold just as the 2nd floor gave way. I don't remember the last few feet. Just the sensation of someone yelling behind me, "Go!" And then the cool kiss of night air as we fell into the dirt. I blacked out with my hands still gripping his jacket. They said I was lucky. They said I was a hero. 7 people were rescued that night from the fire zone. I was the only one seriously injured. The news reports mentioned 1 unnamed firefighter, critically burned. That was me, but no one connected the dots. I liked it that way. 11 months in recovery. First 6 learning how to hold a spoon. Next 5 learning how to sleep without seeing flames behind my eyelids. Skin grafts from my thigh to my forearm. Nerve damage that still makes my fingers tingle every time it rains. By the end of it, I could move my arm mostly. But something inside me stayed scorched. I didn't go back. There was no press conference, no retirement ceremony, no parade. I mailed in my badge with a note that said only, "Thank you." That was it. I never heard from the department again. But that silence didn't hurt half as much as the one from home. I moved to Austin with what was left of my savings and rented a one-bedroom apartment above a motorcycle repair shop. The walls shook when the garage below revved to life at dawn, but it was cheap, and it was mine. I started teaching survival workshops at public schools, community centers, church basements, anywhere that would let me in. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't come with medals or promotions, but it was honest work. When a teenager asks you how to build a signal fire, it's because they're thinking about getting lost. When they ask how to treat a wound, it's because they're already bleeding. They called me Miss Chiara. They never asked about the scars. Never looked too long at the way my left hand trembled when I wrote on the board. They asked how to survive, and I told them. That was enough. My mother never visited during rehab. My father didn't send a card. Malik texted once. "Glad you're okay." No emojis, no punctuation, just those 3 sterile words. I told myself they didn't know how to handle trauma, that maybe they were afraid. But fear, I'd learned, usually tells you where love should be. They didn't know about the grant, $250,000 from the state of Arizona for exceptional acts of heroism. They didn't know I was on the front page of the Sentinel, covered in soot, holding the unconscious man I'd saved. I never showed them the article. When people only see you as a shadow, even your brightest moment feels like wasted light. So I stopped explaining. I stopped trying. I built a new life in the quiet one CPR class at a time. My students laughed with me. The mechanic downstairs offered free oil changes. I wore long sleeves year-round, kept my past folded up in a drawer next to my Social Security card, and told myself it was enough. But the thing about fire is, it leaves behind smoke, and smoke doesn't stay hidden forever. It started with a text. "Dinner Saturday, Bella Lucia. Celebrating Malik's promotion. Come dressed nicely. No stories this time. Please." That last part stung. No stories. As if my life was fiction. As if saving a man from a burning building was just a tall tale I couldn't stop telling. But I went. I always went. Because some part of me, some burnt, fragile piece, still hoped they might see me. Bella Lucia was downtown, where the valet costs more than the wine. The kind of place with a waiting list and a wine list and chairs that didn't creak when you sat. I wore my off-white dress, simple, unassuming. No lipstick, hair tied back, flat shoes because my ankle still acted up after long days on my feet. I looked like a schoolteacher at parent night, which I supposed I was. Inside, the mirrors were already glowing. My father in a too-tight blazer, fanning himself despite the air conditioning. My mother in her pearls, the same ones she wore to Malik's college graduation. Malik stood at the center of it all, navy suit crisp, Rolex peeking from his cuff. He looked like a man who'd never burned a finger in his life. I hovered by the entrance until my mother spotted me. She smiled, not warmly, but efficiently. "Chiara," she said, steering me toward the table with a hand on my elbow. "Come, there's a seat by Cousin Denise, and don't forget to congratulate Malik. He's earned this." I didn't sit near Malik. I didn't sit near my parents. I was placed at the end of the banquet table, beside an aunt who spent 10 minutes inspecting her teeth in a spoon, and a cousin who forgot my name. "Where do you work again?" he asked over the antipasto. "Didn't see your photo on Malik's website." "I run emergency preparedness programs," I said. "Schools, local youth groups, CPR, fire safety." He blinked, then gave that wide, too polite smile. "So, like camping, wilderness stuff?" "Trauma response, evacuation training, signal fire construction, and more." He laughed, roasting marshmallows and yelling run. "Cute." His date laughed, too. Not cruelly, casually, which was worse. I smiled tightly and took another sip of water. They'd never see it, not unless someone told them, not unless someone forced them to. And as fate would have it, someone did. But that came later. First, there was the toast, then the cake. Then, a moment I never saw coming. And for the first time in years, I stepped out of the smoke. The silence after Malik's toast lingered like smoke that refused to dissipate. Everyone at the table clapped politely, some with more enthusiasm than others, though none of it reached the end where I sat. The cake was being wheeled out, 2 tiers of fondant grandeur wrapped in edible golden ribbon with the words "To New Heights" scrolled across the top in silver. It was a moment curated for admiration, for legacy. It was, as always, Malik's moment. My mother leaned in as the server sliced the cake. Her voice was soft but firm, carrying the weight of a lifetime of small corrections. "Let's not draw attention tonight, okay? Just enjoy the evening. This is important for your brother." I nodded. I always nodded. There was a time when I thought silence was survival too. But even as I smiled and lifted a forkful of lemon chiffon to my mouth, I felt something tight begin to snap under my ribs. It had started back in the restaurant lobby when I first laid eyes on Malik's polished world again. The suits, the practiced laughter, the unspoken hierarchy that always placed me one chair too far away. It continued through the meal, the awkward questions, the polite mockery, and it began to burn in earnest the moment someone finally remembered me for something real. It happened quickly, without fanfare. A man in a charcoal suit, older, with a silver-streaked beard and sharp eyes, passed by my side of the table on his way to the restrooms. He stopped mid-step, froze like he'd seen a ghost, then turned slowly toward me. For a moment, I thought he might ask for someone else, or perhaps he mistook me for someone familiar. But then his eyes widened with something between disbelief and recognition. "You," he said softly, almost breathless. "Flagstaff, the fire." I blinked. My fork hovered in the air. I said nothing. His voice dropped further, more intimate now, as if we were the only 2 people in the room. "That was you. You pulled me out. Cabin on the edge of the woods. I remember your voice. You told me to stay with you." And just like that, the entire restaurant seemed to fall still. Cutlery paused. Conversations dulled. A cold flush ran down my spine. He stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on the back of my chair. "I never got to thank you." Before I could respond, before I could even process what was happening, he turned to the head of the table, where Malik sat mid-laugh with a glass of champagne in hand. "Excuse me," he called out. "I hate to interrupt, but there's someone here you all need to acknowledge." Every head turned. Every eye shifted to me. "This woman," he said, pointing directly at me without flourish or drama, "saved my life in 2016. I was trapped in a burning cabin outside Flagstaff. I don't know how she found me. I don't know how she dragged me out, but she did. And I wouldn't be standing here today if it weren't for her." Gasps rose around the table. Someone dropped their spoon. My mother's hand went to her chest. Malik's smile faltered like a light flickering in the wind. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I just sat there, hands folded in my lap, the room growing hot in ways that had nothing to do with fire. And yet, it wasn't shame that paralyzed me. It was the unfamiliar weight of being seen. Dr. Leonard Hale introduced himself to the table, offered brief apologies for the interruption, and disappeared down the hallway. But the ripple he left in his wake stayed. I heard my name spoken in whispers, felt the undercurrent of curiosity shift. People glanced at me differently now, not with mockery or polite detachment, but with a wary awe reserved for someone who had done something unthinkable. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt raw. Back in my apartment that night, still wearing the same off-white dress, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the small wooden drawer where I kept the envelope, the one that had traveled with me from Phoenix to Austin, always sealed, always untouched. Inside was the check, $250,000 from the state for heroism. A thank you I never felt worthy of. Next to it, the laminated newspaper clipping from the Arizona Sentinel. Me, in the photograph, covered in soot, helmet off, cradling an unconscious man. Him, Leonard Hale. My face wasn't proud. It was weary, half lost, scorched with something that went deeper than skin. I folded it back into the drawer, switched off the light, and sat in the dark. I wasn't angry, not yet. But something inside me stirred, an ember long buried now catching wind. 2 days later, another text from my mother. Dinner at ours, Malik's grilling, just family, come hungry. No directives this time, no warnings about stories. I stared at the message, then reread it 3 times. Something in the wording felt different, looser, as if they weren't sure how to speak to me anymore, as if something had shifted in the way they positioned me in the family orbit. I told myself it meant something, maybe pride, maybe peace, maybe they finally saw me. Their house looked exactly as I remembered. Perfectly trimmed lawn, double driveway, wind chimes by the porch that never moved unless prompted. Inside, the table was set with china normally reserved for holidays. Fresh flowers in a cut glass vase, the smell of mushroom soup wafting from the kitchen. But what caught me off guard was the banner. Red paint across a white bedsheet stretched over the dining room wall. Our hero. It was jarring, not touching, not sincere. It felt staged, performative, like a school play backdrop trying too hard to sell a scene. Still, I sat. I ate. I listened to Malik talk about his recent feature in a business magazine, his new startup accelerator partnership, his mentorship program. My father nodded. My mother smiled softly, all as expected. Then Malik leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice quieter now, more deliberate. "I've been thinking," he said, "about expanding my trauma research initiative." I raised an eyebrow. He smiled, rehearsed, casual. It's still in early stages, but with the right support, it could make a real impact. My spoon paused in midair. What kind of support? His eyes flicked briefly to my mother, who offered the gentlest of nods, as if to say, "Go on." "Funding," he said. "Just enough to get the pilot off the ground. A portion of your grant could jumpstart everything." I placed my spoon down slowly. "It would be meaningful," my mother added quickly. "For the family, for the community." I looked at all of them. The china, the banner, the carefully orchestrated warmth. It all clicked into place like a cruel little puzzle. This wasn't pride. It wasn't reconciliation. It was extraction. "It's not a family resource," I said quietly. "It's mine." The air thinned. No one spoke for a few seconds too long. Then my father cleared his throat and changed the subject. My mother refilled wine glasses. Malik smiled like nothing had happened. But every question after that carried subtext. Every compliment echoed expectation. Later that night, I returned home to find a bouquet waiting at my door. White lilies and blush roses. No card at first. Then a note slipped from the stems. "Family is where we return." Another folded slip, this one in Malik's handwriting. "You're the light, Ciara. M." I held it for a moment, then left it on the counter. It didn't feel like affection. It felt like control. A week later, Malik showed up in person. No call. Just a knock on my door and a bottle of wine that cost more than my rent. He looked tired, sweaty, desperate in a tailored kind of way. I didn't invite him in. He walked in anyway. "I need help," he said, collapsing into the chair opposite me. I waited. "It's not about research," he admitted. "It's Vegas." I blinked. "I owe 6 figures. If I don't pay soon, I lose everything. Residency, licensing, investors. If this story gets out, it stains you, too." And there it was. Not a request. A veiled threat dressed in desperation. "How much?" I asked. 50 grand. Just to buy time." I stared at him. If I wasn't the sister with the grant, I asked, would you still be here? He looked away, didn't answer. I can't help you. His smile vanished like a switch flipped. You'll regret this. People forget fast. One speech doesn't make you a legend. He left the wine behind. It sat unopened on my kitchen counter like a promise I never made. That was the moment I realized. They didn't want to know me. They wanted what I'd survived, and they were about to prove it. I found the Reddit post through a screenshot someone texted me. One of my students from the youth program, Lena, I think, sent it with a nervous message, "Hey, is this about you?" At first, I couldn't tell. The post had no names, no dates, just the title. My sister hoards a $250K hero grant while our family falls apart. The body of the post was littered with carefully curated guilt. The phrasing was perfect, subtle, emotional, designed to imply suffering without details, designed to sting without striking. She acts like a savior, but she won't lift a finger to help the people who stood by her when she was down. She got money for pulling someone out of a fire, and now she lets us burn. I'm just asking, is this what heroes do? I read it again, and again. And the third time, I saw it. The tone, the cadence, the way it tried to balance righteousness with vulnerability. It was Malik. Every line a mirror of his boardroom speeches, his PR statements, his TEDx monologues. It was so clearly his voice wrapped in anonymity that I could practically hear it in his measured inflection. Within hours, the post started gaining traction. Comments flooded in, most of them sympathetic, a few skeptical, a handful of trolls. And then came the algorithms. One blog picked it up, then another. The local Austin tabloid posted a clickbait article with a photo of me, pulled from the awards ceremony I hadn't attended. The headline read, "From firefighter to failure. Local hero accused of abandoning her family." My face, barely visible through soot and exhaustion, became the poster child of moral ambiguity. I didn't sleep that night. My phone didn't stop vibrating. Emails poured in from parents, schools, coordinators. Some were polite, some were not. A few tried to hide their concern beneath bureaucratic phrases like reputational alignment and programmatic reassessment. But the meaning was clear. I had become a liability. Within the week, 2 school partnerships withdrew. The Saturday CPR class was put on pause. My church liaison stopped answering emails. I walked into a planning meeting at the recreation center only to find the room empty, the schedule erased from the board. I stood there in silence, staring at the blank white space, wondering how something I'd built from pain could be so easily erased by someone who'd never once asked about the burn beneath my sleeve. Then came the break-in. I came home on a Tuesday evening after a long day at the county youth shelter. I'd just finished a session on emergency evacuation plans with a group of kids who'd seen more fire in their lives than I ever had. My feet ached, my shoulder throbbed. All I wanted was a shower and some sleep. But the moment I reached my door, I knew something was wrong. The frame had splintered. My key turned too easily. Inside, the living room was in disarray. Cushions overturned, bookshelves emptied, the kitchen drawers pulled out and dumped onto the floor. But it wasn't random, it wasn't chaos. It was methodical. Someone had been looking for something. I ran to the back room. The fireproof safe I kept under my bed was open, not forced. Opened. The spare key had been in a drawer, taped to the underside. I should have hidden it better. Inside the safe, papers were scattered. My original certificate from the academy, medical records, letters. The envelope with the grant check was gone. My heart raced. I searched every inch of the room until I found it, tucked inside one of the books on trauma psychology I used for lesson planning. The check was still folded, still intact, but on top of it, in the space where the envelope had sat, was a note. No envelope, no name, just a torn scrap of notebook paper with 10 words scrawled in angry ink. If you don't know how to share, someone will decide for you. I stood there for a long time, holding the note between two fingers, the edges shaking. There were no signs of forced entry. No fingerprints on record. The police filed a report and left. They asked if I had any idea who might have done it. I didn't say Malik's name. Instead, I emailed Dr. Hale. He responded in less than 10 minutes. Meet me. I've been watching what they're doing. I can help. We met at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of downtown, the kind of place where the baristas wore flannel and the coffee cost more than my weekly groceries. He was already seated when I arrived, a folder on the table in front of him. He stood, shook my hand with a kind of reverence that still felt foreign to me, and gestured for me to sit. "I hope you don't mind," he said, pushing the folder toward me. I had someone look into things. Inside were photos, surveillance images of Malik meeting with a man outside my building, screenshots of wire transfers, a draft of the Reddit post retrieved from a cached email tied to Malik's hospital login credentials, even copies of forged documents, transfer slips with my forged signature, grant communications with altered dates. "I hired a private investigator," Dr. Hale explained, "after what I saw at the gala. I couldn't let this go. You deserve better." My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. The evidence was overwhelming. There was no room for doubt. Malik had orchestrated everything, the post, the break-in, the defamation, and he hadn't even tried that hard to cover his tracks. He'd relied on one thing, that I wouldn't fight back. I looked up, my throat tight. "If I go through with this," I whispered, "I burn what's left of my family." Dr. Hale didn't look away. "No," he said, "you walk out of the smoke." The courthouse felt colder than any fire I'd ever faced. The waiting area smelled of bleach and dread. I wore a navy suit with clean lines, no jewelry, no makeup, just a binder full of evidence and the clarity that comes when you've stopped hoping for an apology. Malik sat on the far side of the courtroom, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. His shoulders were hunched, his jaw tight, the bravado drained from his face. My parents were seated behind him. My mother's pearl earrings trembled slightly every time she blinked. My father sat with his hands clasped, his gaze fixed on a spot on the wall. The prosecutor was concise and sharp. She laid out the forged documents, the falsified bank slips, the surveillance images, the Reddit draft. She detailed the social and financial harm, the reputational damage, the emotional distress. She presented the audit from Malik's company, over $200,000 diverted under the guise of a charitable trauma initiative that existed only on paper. Then the judge turned to me. "Would you like to speak?" I stood. My palms were damp. My spine felt like steel. "I'm not here because I hate my brother," I said. "I'm here because silence didn't keep me safe. It just kept me small, and I'm done being small." I turned to Malik. He didn't meet my eyes. "You didn't destroy me," I said. "You revealed what I've survived. That's your legacy now, not mine." There was no applause, no swelling music, just the quiet weight of truth finally spoken. The judge sentenced Malik to full financial restitution, suspension from practicing medicine, and mandatory rehabilitation. No jail time, but enough to bury his reputation in the very ashes he'd tried to pour over mine. That night, I sat on my living room floor with the folder still open beside me. I stared at the envelope for a long time. Then, finally, I picked it up. The next morning, I called a woman named Imani who ran a struggling nonprofit for at-risk teens. I called a contractor. I called a lawyer. I called a friend who used to run community outreach for the fire department. Within 6 weeks, the Ember House opened its doors. We weren't fancy. We didn't have a logo or a board of donors or polished brochures. But we had a building. We had cots. We had emergency kits. We had survivors. Kids who had been in car accidents, house fires, floods. Kids who'd been told they were broken. Kids who knew too much about fear and too little about being heard. And we had me. I taught classes again. How to stop bleeding. How to carry someone safely. how to breathe through panic. I taught kids how to hold dignity when the world tried to strip it away. I taught them that survival isn't just a skill. It's a decision, one you make every morning, even when no one claps for you. One afternoon, after a class on wilderness navigation, a boy named Jaden tugged on my sleeve as the others filed out. He looked up at me with wide, serious eyes and asked, "Miss Yara, are you still scared of fire?" I smiled. "Everyone's scared of fire," I said, "but when you understand what it burns, you learn what to protect." He nodded like he understood, like it meant something. Later that week, Dr. Hale showed up with a small wooden box. Inside was a silver ring. No diamonds, no embellishments, just a simple engraving along the inner band, a flicker of flame. "You saved my life," he said. "Let's build something together, something that stays warm." I didn't speak, I just reached for his hand. And that night, for the first time in years, I slept without the smell of smoke curling into my dreams. The morning after I signed the final papers for Ember House's nonprofit status, I walked into the building just as the sun crested the tops of the power lines, sending golden light skimming across the parking lot's cracked asphalt. The door stuck a little when I pushed it open. It always did. The smell inside was a mix of fresh paint, hand sanitizer, and something deeper, something like hope wearing work boots. Our first full week had passed with cautious optimism. Teens came in quiet, eyes skeptical, arms crossed. But they stayed. They asked questions. They showed up the next day. The funds from the grant were dwindling now, but I didn't mind. Every dollar I spent, I could trace. Every line item on the budget reflected something I could touch, something that mattered. Extra trauma kits, emergency blankets, curriculum binders, the peace of mind that came from giving kids what no one had given me, tools and truth. It was a Wednesday when I received the letter. A plain envelope, handwritten, the ink shaky but familiar, no return address, just my name in the center. Inside was a single sheet of paper. My mother's handwriting, unmistakable even after all these years. "We see you now, and we're proud." The words landed with a soft thud inside my chest. I stared at them for a long time, unsure what to feel. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the things said, the things not said. Just 7 words straining to mean more than they ever had before. I folded the paper quietly and placed it in the same drawer where the newspaper clipping once lived. Maybe that was enough. Maybe not. But for the first time, I didn't need it to be. The center grew faster than I expected. A local news station ran a segment on our programs. Parents began calling. Volunteers stepped forward. People donated in small, meaningful ways. Boxes of gloves, CPR dummies, snacks for the kids. One afternoon, a retired paramedic brought in a defibrillator with a bow on top. "Got me through 20 years, he said. "Time it helps someone else now." We added weekend workshops, a garden out back, a reading room with beanbags and donated books. The kids named it the No Fire Zone. I didn't correct them. One evening, as I cleaned up after a long class on splinting and immobilization, the front door creaked open. I turned, expecting to see Jaden or one of the other regulars. But it wasn't a student. It was Malik. He looked thinner, not broken, not defeated, just smaller. The man who once wore his ambition like armor now seemed carved from something softer. Still expensive, still polished, but dimmed. Like someone had turned the volume down on everything he used to be. He held a paper bag in one hand. Inside was a tub of soup from our old family favorite, the one we used to go to when we were still young enough to sit next to each other without needing to prove anything. "I thought," he began, then stopped. "I heard about the center. I wanted to see it." I didn't say anything, just moved aside so he could enter. He walked slowly, taking it all in. The posters, the checklists, the shelves lined with first aid manuals. His gaze stopped at the wall where we'd hung laminated Polaroids of the students who had completed our core training module. Jaden's photo was near the top. He was grinning so wide you could count every crooked tooth. "This place is real," Malik said after a while. I knew it was. He trailed off. I nodded. He sat in the chair nearest the whiteboard, the one the kids always fought over because it had the least wobble. "I messed up," he said, eyes fixed on the floor, worse than I even realized. I waited. I didn't fill the space for him. I kept thinking I could fix it, that if I just explained or spun it or... He stopped again, ran a hand over his face. "I know I don't deserve anything from you. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." The words didn't hit me like I thought they would. They didn't crack open old wounds or melt my anger into forgiveness. They just landed, flat and honest. I sat across from him. "I used to think if I waited long enough," I said, "someone would say that maybe if I stayed quiet, eventually the truth would be enough to make people care." He looked at me, really looked. For the first time in years, there was no calculation behind his eyes. "I do care," he said. "Too late, maybe, but I do." We sat there for a while, the sound of the ceiling fan chopping the silence into manageable pieces. I didn't invite him to stay. I didn't ask him to leave. Before he stood to go, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a check, $7,000. "From what's left of my savings," he said. "No strings, just maybe it helps." I took it, more out of instinct than decision. "Don't come back unannounced," I said. He nodded. After he left, I didn't cry, I didn't shake. I just filed the check away under donations, put the soup in the fridge, and went back to locking up the building. Weeks passed. The programs expanded. I got used to the rhythm of waking up before the sun, checking supply levels, answering emails with grants in the subject line. I began dreaming in diagrams, rescue positions, escape routes, risk assessments. It was a good kind of exhaustion. One night, after the kids had gone home and the lights were low, Dr. Hale came by again. He carried something wrapped in brown paper. No fanfare, just a smile. "I've been meaning to give you this," he said. I unwrapped the package slowly. Inside was a framed photo, me pulling him from the burning cabin, captured by a firefighter's helmet cam, and later extracted by the media. In the image, my face is half turned, streaked with soot, eyes locked on something just ahead. It was the first time I'd ever seen it. "You never looked back," he said quietly. I held the frame in my hands and felt something shift inside me, gentle and final. The next day, I hung it in the Ember House hallway. Not at the entrance, not where visitors would see it first, but near the back, where the kids gathered after class to chat and snack and figure out who they were. Some of them noticed it, some didn't. That was fine. Jaden saw it a week later. "Miss Chiara," he said, tugging on my sleeve, "that's you." "It is. You look strong." I was scared. He tilted his head. "You didn't look scared. Maybe because I'd already made the choice." "What choice?" "To not let the fire decide who I was." He thought about that, then nodded solemnly. "I'm glad you're not just a hero. You're here." I smiled. "I'm both," I said. A few days later, another letter arrived. This one from the Department of Emergency Services. They wanted to list Ember House as an official partner site for statewide disaster readiness programs. They were offering support, funding, recognition. They called me a model for modern heroism. I accepted, but I didn't frame the certificate. One morning, I arrived at the center early to find a candle burning on the back porch. No note, no explanation, just a single white candle in a stormproof holder, flickering steadily in the morning breeze. It felt like a symbol, not of mourning, but of memory. Someone, somewhere, wanted to honor the fire without fearing it. That night, I lit it again. Sometimes, the kids asked me what it meant. "Why do we light that candle every week?" they'd say. And I'd answer, because fire doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it clears space for something new. And then I'd tell them what I had once whispered to myself on the floor of a burning cabin. I am not the smoke, I am the spark. And that was enough. If this story meant something to you, consider subscribing. Share it with someone who needs it. And if you want more, there's another video waiting for you.